Good afternoon, everybody. Yesterday, we saw the great lengths that Donald Trump and his administration will go to abuse power in order to silence and intimidate anyone who disagrees with them. We learned through the media that federal prosecutors tried and failed to get an indictment of us from a grand jury. This is outrageous. I want to be clear about something. This is not a good news story. This is a story about how Donald Trump and his cronies are trying to break our system in order to silence anyone who lawfully speaks out against them, and to send a signal to every American that they better think twice before they speak out, or they might be next. I want to emphasize this because it's important. Federal prosecutors went to a grand jury to seek criminal charges against members of the United States Senate for something we said. They tried to have us charged and thrown into jail because we said something that they didn't like, because we repeated what the law actually is. This happened here. This is straight from the authoritarian playbook. This did not happen in Russia or China. In Russia and China, we see these things. This didn't happen decades ago. It happened less than a mile from this building in the United States of America yesterday. And it was carried out by a federal prosecutor who got unanimous Republican support in August. It was authorized by an attorney general who is serving as the president's personal attack dog. Folks, this is the master alarm flashing for our democracy. It is threatening the very foundation of our system, that we have a right to free speech, to lawfully speak out and protest our government without fear of retaliation. That we have a Congress whose responsibility and obligation is to oversee and criticize, when necessary, the executive branch. That we have a Department of Justice that is independent and loyal to the Constitution, not to one man. Donald Trump and his lackeys are putting all of that at risk for their own power. They don't care about everyday Americans. They don't care about the struggles that people are facing with rising costs and a crappy economy. They don't care about using the justice system to go after real criminals. They care about themselves, their own power, and their own wealth. We know the law and the Constitution is on our side. We saw that yesterday when U.S. citizens, the members of a grand jury, they took a stand and said no. And I'm also waiting for an important decision by a federal judge in my case against Pete Hegseth, who this president and Republicans in the Senate chose to give tremendous power. Where are they? Where are the free speech absolutist Republicans now, who were so concerned about the weaponization of government? What happened to them? Where are they as Donald Trump tries to throw senators and representatives in jail for what they say? The best moment for them to stand up Would have been in November when Donald Trump said we should be hanged for this video. But the next best moment, well, that is right now. Because our democracy has been around for 250 years, but it is not guaranteed. From the very beginning of our nation, it has depended on the willingness of patriotic Americans to fight for it. Senator Slotkin and I, we did not ask for this. We're just the first through the breach. But you'll be damn sure that we are not going to back down. We've been in war zones for this country. We fought our country's enemies. This doesn't intimidate us. And we know that this is much bigger than the two of us. The most patriotic thing that any American can do right now is to continue exercising our rights, continue speaking truth to power, and not backing down. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Well, as you heard last night at the direction of President Trump, U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro attempted to persuade a grand jury to indict us on criminal charges. If things had gone a different way, we'd be preparing for arrest. Fortunately, her attempt failed, and a group of anonymous Americans upheld the rule of law and determined that this case should not proceed. Just to review the bidding, this started with a 90-second video in November that a group of us organized, all of us with military and service backgrounds, simply restating the law in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, that military members had a duty to refuse illegal orders. We said nothing more than everyone from Secretary Pete Hegseth and Attorney General Pam Bondi have said themselves out of their own mouths. For that, President Trump said that we should be investigated, arrested, and ultimately hanged. And that's exactly what he had Pirro and Bondi do yesterday. They had opened an inquiry in December, they carried it forward in January, and when we refused to sit for a voluntary interview, in 7 days' time, they went in front of a grand jury. But to be clear, this is not about the content of this one video. Let's call it for what it is. The president is using our justice system to weaponize against his perceived enemies. I think that we've come to a really sad moment in America where the paradigm of leadership has come in completely reversed. In 2026, instead of looking to our elected leaders like the president as setting an example, it is now up to individual citizens in their private capacity to uphold the values of democracy, free speech, liberty, justice. As Mark said, this is an authoritarian playbook that many of us have watched play out abroad over and over and over again, except now we're seeing it in the United States. Yesterday, 20 anonymous Americans who we will never meet, who made up that grand jury, told us more about the values of America than Jeanine Pirro or Pam Bondi or certainly this president. Small business owners, a mailman, a teacher, we have no idea who they are, but just like people in Minneapolis, the people on the ground who understand the values of this country are the ones currently upholding it. So with those small acts of bravery, our country and our values hang in the balance. Now, this entire episode was really not about us. The president went high and right after our video, tweeted about us 12 times, kicked off both physical intimidation and then legal intimidation. The intimidation was the point, to get other people beyond us to think twice about speaking out. But the real question is, if the president can do this to us, to sitting senators, who else can he do it to? What can he do to a business leader, to a community leader, or to the mom on TikTok who goes viral because she's criticizing the president? We hope that the news today is the end of the investigation, but hope is not a strategy. The president could easily watch this press conference, go high and right again, kick off another cycle of physical intimidation and legal intimidation. So we need to stay on offense. And I think both Senator Kelly and I have kept all of our legal options open as we go forward. Some of you know that I recently lost my father a couple weeks ago. And my father taught me two things. He taught me right from wrong, and he taught me to love this country. Senator Kelly and I have both served our country. We have risked our lives for our country. This country has given me everything. So if we have to sit here and take physical intimidation and legal intimidation to uphold the country we love, we will happily do that. We know right from wrong. Whether you voted for President Trump or you voted for Kamala Harris, we know right from wrong. And weaponizing the legal system against people for basic freedom of speech goes against everything we were taught since third grade. And I'm more than happy to defend it.
Questions? Yeah.
You both declined to sit down for interviews with the Justice Department as they reached out to you. What would have been the harm in actually sitting down and talking to them, explaining your point of view, arguing why you think what you said was legal?
Yeah, so, we wrote a letter yesterday. Number one, what we did was completely public. This doesn't need to be investigated. We did it in public and then talked about it to you and others in the media over and over and over again on public. So all the facts of the so-called case are public. Second of all, it was clearly, when our lawyers sat down with them, just about checking a box and doing what the president wanted them to do. Their heart wasn't even in it. So I'm not going to legitimize a voluntary inquiry when it was so clearly something that was made up to fulfill the goals of this president. So 7 days later, and you see that they responded by trying to get us charged criminally. That is an absolute confirmation that this is not about real law. It's about weaponizing the justice system against people you disagree with.
Yeah, so Tom Tillis, one of your Republican colleagues, sits in the Judiciary Committee, voted to confirm most of the members of the DOJ. He did tweet that he thanks to the jury for doing what they did and that political lawfare is not normal and needs to stop. But tweets aren't really actions. Do you need to see Republican senators, House members, people who have real power here talk about actions and not just complaints or sort of tweeting solidarity?
Well, we appreciate Senator Tillis's comments. For sure, there isn't a lot to point to out there from the other side of the aisle. I've received some, private communication from a couple of others, but not a lot publicly. So what you're talking about is the next step. Is it possible we could see something like that in the coming days? Yeah, I suppose. I'm not going to hold my breath here. We need to hear more from the leadership in the Republican Party, both here in the Senate, in the House. I think many of you saw what Mike Johnson, said the other day. He seems to be fully, on board with us being thrown into jail. Yeah, I'd like to see, more from the other side of the aisle, but we're going to have to see what happens in the coming days. Yeah.
Senator, Leader Thune told my colleague here at Punch Bowl this morning that he said, quote, "That's the judicial system at work, I guess." Can you respond to that? Can you also say whether you consider this an impeachable offense?
Well, this isn't the judicial system at work. It's not supposed to work like this. It's not supposed to be a president deciding, right out of the gate here that members of the United States Senate should be hanged, calling for our execution. And then I guess when he realized that was not a good idea, or somebody told him, that's ridiculous, then he went with prosecution for something that is in the First Amendment. And by the way, this isn't just obviously about us. This is you guys too. You're going to find yourself in the same situation that Don Lemon is in if this continues the way I think the president and the people who work directly for him would like it to continue. So, I hope to hear more from Leader Thune about this. I guess this is the way the system is supposed to work. Well, if you go back historically and look at how often or how infrequent somebody does not get indicted when they go in front of a grand jury, it is very rare that this happens. In 2013, there were 165,000 indictments. There were 5 that were not successful. Just 5. This process has a 99.997 success rate. Yes, I did the math for 2013. I don't know what it is this year. It's hard to find the data. But he had every intention yesterday of being successful. I think he did, Pam Bondi did, U.S. Attorney did, of being successful and throwing the 2 of us in jail.
Senator, do you know?
Yeah.
Excuse me, do you know precisely what charges federal prosecutors sought indictment on, and do you know what statute was violated, and what was the legal defense presented?
No, we literally are finding out from the media, and everything. We have not been formally told what they were trying to charge us with and what law they were using. It's just what we're hearing through the media, which is, again, part and parcel. And I would just say to the last point about our colleague saying something, I appreciate Senator Tillis saying something. He's gone further than anybody else. But it's just a sad moment when anonymous grand jurors, just citizens called at random in Washington, D.C., have more bravery to uphold basic rule of law and stand for that than some of our colleagues here in the Senate.
And by the way, in a grand jury, you do not get to present a legal defense. It's only the prosecutor and the jurors, and it's secret. So we don't know what the answer to your question is. We don't ever expect to really find out. Yeah.
Senator Slotkin, last week you said you were considering suing Bondi. Have you made any further determination on what you plan to do?
Yeah, so last week we just sent a letter in line with the law asking both Bondi and Pirro to retain all their records should I choose in the future to sue, under my constitutional rights. And then earlier today, we sent a letter back to them saying, okay, after the failure in court yesterday, can we please confirm with you that this is over, that you're not going to try yet another attempt at investigation, arrest, prosecution, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm keeping all my options open. Obviously, Senator Kelly has already moved in these ways. But I think I had a real epiphany in December when the first FBI inquiry paperwork came over. I had a lot of people tell me, just sit quiet, keep your head down, let Christmas happen, and this will hopefully all go away, right? And you go into Christmas break and you're not talking about politics during the holiday season. And I came back, and January 5th, here's another piece of paperwork now from the Department of Justice and Pirro saying, no, we're pursuing this. So sitting down and taking it and being quiet doesn't actually make you safer. Going on offense seems to be the only way to get their attention. So I certainly reserve that right of keeping all those options open.
So you answered my question on what your legal options are going to be, but I have 2 questions. Do you anticipate this to be the end of the road for this, or do you anticipate them to continue to try to do something in this regard? And also, have you heard from any members of the military who have heeded your advice, the idea that they have ignored what they deem to be illegal orders?
Well, the first part of your question, I don't put anything past them. Donald Trump has a pretty limited, capacity to move on from things, and he doesn't take bad news well, and he's got quite the ego that I think it makes it difficult for him to move on and see what the writing on the wall here is. He should know that the Constitution is on our side. Second part of your question about people reaching out to me, of course, many, including 3 and 4 stars, retired service members, who have told me that they have changed what they do and what they say publicly in their retirement because of what has happened to us. That's already happened. I hope in time that corrects itself when they see that Senator Slotkin and I standing up to these bullies, to this administration that clearly does not care about the Constitution or the rule of law, that assuming we're successful in this over a period of time, that will correct itself and members of the military will former members, retired service members, and veterans, and all U.S. citizens can get back to a place where they feel free to exercise their First Amendment rights.
I feel very firmly that the president has created a climate of fear, whether it's our universities, our media, CEOs, and the impact of, his tariffs, that everyone is self-censoring themselves because they're scared of physical intimidation and legal intimidation, the spotlight being placed on them. And so I think, we just made the clear decision that we're not going to go down like that, because it doesn't get better. It just gets worse. And if fear is contagious, hopefully so is courage. And I think right now, certainly I'm drawing inspiration from, people like the grand jury, people like folks peacefully protesting in Minneapolis. Like, I think the common citizen right now is showing the country and the world how to stand up for the values you believe in. But many leaders around our country have gone quiet and put their head in the sand because they fear retribution from Donald Trump.
I'm sorry, you mentioned retired service members, but have you heard from any current
I have.
service members who
Yes.
have said, I feel
Yes.
worried about the idea that I might be
Many times.
going, okay.
Yep.
Just to follow up on what Frank was asking, have you heard from service members who have said that they have not followed orders that they believe were illegal in response to your videos?
I have spoken to people, current and former, who have dealt with this issue. Sure, I mean, you see them on TV, often, on cable news. They talk about often JAGs, who wound up, in this situation, or senior leadership, that have said, on occasion that they have, dealt with, this issue. But it's pretty black and white. I mean, it's on a plaque, at West Point. When the law and orders are in conflict, you follow the law. It's something we're all taught. I was taught about this in naval science class at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. Some people are reminded of this, depending on what kind of unit you are in. You're reminded of it frequently, but not everybody. It was a very simple message. But yeah, I mean, that is something that happens on occasion to people who serve, especially if they serve for a long period of time and if they serve in roles where they are, directly involved in combat operations.
What would you say to someone who's not a U.S. Senator, can't go on offense if they get into a situation like this? And my second question is, what type of toll emotionally has this taken on you guys, if anything?
Well, I mean, I think part of the reason, certainly I'm doing it, and I think both of us, is because if the average citizen had the physical threats and then the legal threats that we've been facing, you understand why people just go to ground, right? Just the ability to hire a lawyer, right? And as a senator, I have the ability to stand up a legal defense fund and help pay for the lawyer that I need to defend myself. The average citizen can't do that, right? And the average citizen doesn't get Capitol Police when there's 24/7 threats against you and your house and your family and your parents. So I feel like I'm doing it because others cannot. Again, I think they're trying to send a signal to others to deter them from speaking by watching what we go through. And then, I would just say both of us have served in dangerous situations. Both of us have put our lives at risk. Neither of us enjoy this. I certainly have worked alongside the FBI and the Department of Justice as a CIA officer my entire life. I have great respect for what the career professionals do. They keep us safe every single day. So I don't enjoy waking up and having those same organizations targeted and pointed against me for freedom of speech. I don't. But he's counting on us to feel weak in the knees and to bow out. And I think that's why we went the opposite direction, was to say that point directly to the president.
Yeah, I mean, this has not taken any kind of emotional toll on me. And I'm pretty sure with Senator Slotkin too. I mean, we've been through, both of us, harder things than this. And we're not going to let the president do that to us. And I really think he picked the wrong two people to go after.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
Right there.
To press you further on Mike Johnson's comments yesterday
Yeah.
after they failed to secure the indictment, said you should be charged because if you're obstructing law enforcement and getting in the way of sensitive operation.
We're obstructing law enforcement? Is that what he said? I think Mike needs to go back to his office and seriously think about what he says publicly. Maybe he was caught off guard. I'll give him maybe a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, but he should really clarify this. He's the Speaker of the House of Representatives. He's one of the most powerful people in this country. And if he's going to side at every moment with this administration when they are clearly not on the side of the Constitution, I think he's got to really evaluate why he is there and who he is really serving.
Yeah, I would just say, again, in 2026, I think the paradigm of leadership is on its head. If the Speaker of the House is just going to do whatever the president says in a separate branch of government, no matter whether it's right or wrong or whether it upholds our democratic values or not, then he has some lessons to take from grand jury members, from peaceful protesters, from people who understand the values of the country. And the way that some of our colleagues have ceded their leadership as a separate branch of government, try being a teacher and trying to explain today's America to third graders, right? So I just think, again, I think Mark's point is right. The Speaker of the House should take a beat and remember why he's there, and that our founding fathers designed this as a separate branch of government to provide checks and balances on the president, not salute like a good boy and do what he says every single time.
Good point to end on. Thank you.